Hello, everyone, and welcome to Wind Down Wednesday. Cheers. So I'm going to start today off with giving it to my aide, my assistant Yvette, for her to explain how the webinar will go.
Yeah, just Commissioner, if you could just please go over the latest updates at the BCC meeting and the questions that I sent to you that were sent to me. We only got 2 comments for you to address them.
Okay, all right, thank you. Well, at this past BCC meeting, we discussed, well, let me first off with, for anyone who's watching who is not familiar, you should be by now, if you were able to log on to this webinar, that I am Emily Bonilla, your Orange County Commissioner for District 5. And we just had our BCC meeting yesterday. And we did go over, one of the highlights was that we went over some of the small business grant funding from the CRF. And what that is, well, I'll just say that my involvement with the National Association of Counties, I was able to work with county commissioners across the nation, and we advocated at the federal level for local government funding for COVID-19 relief. And so those funds are called CRF, or COVID-19 relief funds, because in government we have to add acronyms and abbreviations to everything. So that money is right now, it's $240 million that came to Orange County because of those efforts that I had with the National Association of Counties. And that money right now is being used for small business grants in the amount of $10,000, and for individuals for financial assistance with $1,000 per household. So we've had some issues trying to get that money out. We didn't have enough small businesses applying for it, and we did put some restrictions on it. But the federal government came with a lot of restrictions of what we could use that money for. So we had to be very careful with how we gave out that money. And also the businesses that we were giving to the money had to follow this code for Orange County. And so some of the code, which I'm going to work with the county on fixing, was that if you're a home business, you're not allowed to have any employees, which doesn't make any sense. I understand not having employees working in the house with you, but you should be able to have virtual employees who are working from their own homes. So I'm going to work with the county on updating those codes. But at the moment, that's not allowed. And so people who have that type of business do not qualify for the grants because they're not following county code. So we discussed about at least allowing solopreneurs or sole proprietorship businesses to be able to qualify for the grant who work out of their homes, who would still be falling under that they're following the code. And we also discussed a tiered system, which, working with the Florida Association of Counties and again the National Association of Counties, I've talked to county commissioners across the nation and the state, and what they're doing in their counties is that they're using a tier system. So it depends on, they're doing it by either how much money your business made or how many employees your business has. Depends on a different amount of money from the grant that you'd get. I presented that the first time we discussed having the small business grants for Orange County, because the county wanted to do just $10,000 for everyone. And I discussed a tiered approach that, like I said, talking with other county commissioners, they are doing that. The county decided not to do it at that time, but now they're open to that idea. And so that's what we're implementing as well, as more of a tiered system for the grants. A couple of other things, and I have to say I'm really excited. One of the land use cases that was very controversial in my district was the developer decided to withdraw. I want to give some history on this too. So this was a development in East Orange County on Lake Pickett, the actual lake, not the road, but it is off the road as well. And this is in the Lake Pickett Rural Settlement. And in the Lake Pickett Rural Settlement, there are 1 acre properties on the lake and half-acre properties that are not on the lake. And in this development, they wanted to do a 1/3 acre property that was off the lake in the second portion or second phase of their development. And that's not consistent with what's in the area. And the people of the area definitely did not want it. So I was, now it's withdrawn, I could say I was in support of that. However, I will say that with the issues I've had and sorry, let me back up just a little bit. The process of a land use case when it comes to the county is that the applicant, he or she applies with the county to do a rezoning or a comp plan amendment. And that then depends on what it is, will go to a community meeting, which we had for this case. And at the community meeting, we get to hear from the citizens and what they want or don't want, or see if there's any compromise that the community wants to do. The next step after that is that we have a board of appointees from the commissioners. It's called the Planning and Zoning Commission, and I have an appointee on there as well. Well, we've been having, talking with my appointee on that board, there's been some issues where the district appointees on that board has been voted against on cases, land use cases within their district. So almost everything, even if that district appointee is saying no to it, has almost been passed. So looking at that and this controversy of this issue, most of the time the county commissioners, like myself, District 5 and the others, would mostly fall in line with the decision from that planning and zoning board. So I was, and also I will say that these, developers, they give a lot of campaign donations to the other commissioners on the board as well. So there was a lot of political pressure for this to go through. So to get ahead of it, what I did was I sat down with the developers, I sat down with that appointee of the PZC and try to negotiate something that would, some benefits that if this was passed and I failed to get it denied, that it'd be a better project than what they were originally proposing. And so my strategy was to get that passed at that stage, which it was going to pass anyway, because like I said, everything seemed to be passing in that board. So my appointee went ahead and, we all sat down, negotiated that. And then that's how it passed those negotiations within that plan. So then when it was to come to the BCC, when I voted no, and if the rest of the board decided to vote against me and still pass it, at least I would have had something better than what was originally proposed passed. So that was the plan. But because the people came out in spades and came out hard, the developer saw that, and I would have to say that they seemed very considerate when they told me that they were withdrawing. They said they didn't want to put this pressure on the board, and they said that they didn't want people to feel like the board wasn't hearing them. So, I thought that was pretty smart on their end to withdraw, and it was withdrawn. And I have to say that the people need to continue to stay engaged. And I know in every Wind Down Wednesday, I've said that, and I'm going to continue saying it, that the people do have power, and you have to speak up and you have to show up, or things are just going to get passed, while your back is turned. So you have to stay engaged. So I am going to go to some of the questions. Those are just a couple of highlights, but we're already running out of time. I'm halfway through the half hour, so I want to get to some of the questions. The first question we have is, thank you for accepting questions in advance. Earlier this week, I received a flyer in the mail describing Emily's egregious spending of taxpayer dollars. As someone who has managed a travel and entertainment budget for a global corporation, personally, I'm not shocked by these numbers. However, I think it would be helpful for Emily to comment or clarify these expenses. So I have to be very careful here because this is a official office webinar, county business webinar. So I have to keep campaign stuff out of this. So I won't say too much about the mailer, except for I'll say that I prefer blue over red. But I will go over some of my county business activities that I went through. So, okay. All right, so all of my county travel has been approved. We have the only, well, let's say out of 67 counties, we have 67 counties in Florida, and we're all organized different ways. And here in Orange County, we're the only ones who have an elected comptroller. And what the comptroller is someone who reviews all of our expenses, all of our funding and budget, everything, and makes sure that we're doing everything properly. So they review all of my travel expenses. We have to fill out reports saying where we're going, why we're going there, and what we're doing. So we have to also provide an itinerary of everything that we're doing while we're on this county business trip. And so that's what I've passed in. And I will say that the information that has been given to the public has not been, it's been deceiving, and it's been misinformation, and it hasn't provided the facts. And so I will say that the travel that I have done has been for my business with the Florida Association of Counties, the National Association of Counties, which you've heard me talk about, especially during this COVID-19, because that all the travel that I've done with the National Association of Counties, which is I'll explain a little bit what they do. So it's training for county commissioners. It's networking and learning from other county commissioners, so when you go to the training, you're learning from other county commissioners who's been there and done that. And so I've gotten so many great ideas and have implemented them in my district. They also do advocacy at the federal level, which is what I've talked about in getting that $243 million for Orange County. So if anyone wants to talk about any of those expenses, well, we've had a really high return on investment where we've gotten $243 million out of that plus more. So that's National Association of Counties. And they were actually supposed to host the annual conference so they have the annual conference, and the annual conference travels around the country so that different people in different states get to go. And so that's why they do it in different areas. And they were supposed to host it this year in Orange County, but because of COVID-19, the annual conference was canceled. I hope next year that things are better and we'll be able to host it here next year. I hope that it doesn't go someplace else, because I was really excited about, showing other county commissions across the nation more about Orange County, what we're doing here. Also, I would like to say with the National Association of Counties too, we also, as commissioners, we also sit in policy committees. And in these policy committees, we go over policies that we want to lobby for at the federal level. Some of the stuff that we're doing is stopping bad bills at the federal level. We've been very successful in a lot of that. One of the things that I'm really involved with, one of the organizations, maybe not a lot of people, are interested. It's not really sexy topic, but it's preventing trucks that travel from being able to be heavier. And the reason why we don't want that is because if the trucks are heavier, then more accidents could happen, and also it's a toll on our roads, which the counties have to pay for that. So, to be able to maintain our roads, that comes out of your property taxes. And if we have heavier trucks on our roads, it's going to put more wear and tear on our roads, and it's going to cost the taxpayers more money. So those are things, just one small example of things that we fight for. The Florida Association of Counties is another one that I'm part of. That's in the state of Florida, and we have 4 conferences a year, and one of them is always in Orange County, and the other one is always in Tallahassee. And the other 2 move around the state of Florida, again, so that the different county commissioners have a chance to go if they can't go so far for some reason. So what they do is similar to National Association of Counties, but it's on the state level. So we go to Tallahassee and we lobby for and against stuff. One of the things I was able to fight for or lobby for was, well, there was one that we were really working on, but that's for another time. But so one of the things that came out of that is that I was able to, through the Florida Association of Counties, is to really network and build relationships with the state legislators. And through that, there was a vote that was coming up that was going to affect the East Orange area, specifically 3 miles around UCF. And that would have allowed urban development within 3 miles around UCF, which also included the Lake Pickett area that was so controversial with the grow and Sestany. A lot of people has heard about that. That's why I was fighting as a citizen, and which led to me running for office and getting elected. So that would have then preempted us from being able to stop urban developments like that in the rural area. So because of the Florida Association of Counties and me building those relationships, and I will say that I learned a lot from the Florida Association of Counties and National Association of Counties of how to advocate for my district. And through that and my relationships, when that vote was on the floor, I was calling and texting these legislators, and I explained to them why this was bad. They were going to vote yes on it because they didn't know what it was. And when I told them what it was and to vote no on it, they voted no, and it was dead on the floor. So that is the power of these associations that I'm involved with and my networking and involvement in them. NALEO is another one, the National Association of Latino Elected Officials. And I'll say that a lot of the travel that I did with them was through scholarships that they paid for my travel, and it was for training. So they're very involved in making sure that their Latino elected officials are the best elected officials they can be. And the training, I have to say, has been amazing. The most powerful one, and which has brought a lot of benefit to my district, was the public finance management training. And one quote, and I'll paraphrase, I can't remember exactly what she said, but I will never forget it. There was an elected official who was the panelist who was teaching the class, and she's been an elected official for over 12 years. And she said it took her, by her 12th year, it took her that long to really decide to learn about public finance management. And once she learned that, she brought so much money to her district and was able to get ahead of everyone else on her board. And so she said, if you want to be able to benefit your district and bring money to your constituents, then you need to learn everything you can about public finance management. And so that's what I did. And because of that, the process of budgeting in our county, we have 2 sets of meetings. There's the first set in July, and then there's another set of meetings in September. The one in September is when we really do the final vote. But with the first one, the first set of meetings, the very first meeting is just staff presenting on their budgets, the department budgets and the division budgets. And then the next meeting in July is more presentations like that. And then if the county commissioners want to discuss what they've heard from those meetings, then that's when they discuss that, all the presentation from the divisions and departments. And then the next meeting in September, that's when, if there's anything that the commissioners want to present for the budget, that's when they make their presentations and what they want from the budget, and then it's voted on. By that time, it is way too late for commissioners to get anything for their district, because at that time, all the budget has already been decided on, all the money has already been allocated, and what's left over are what we call reserve funds. And reserve funds are funds that should be put aside in case of an emergency, like if we have a hurricane, a natural disaster, a worldwide pandemic. That's what that money should be used for, any emergencies. And so at that point, if a commissioner wants something, it's going to come out of anything that they want to spend is going to come out of those reserve funds. So it's very controversial to use some of those reserve funds. And so what you're asking for is scrutinized highly at that point. So because of what I've learned through the National Association of Latino elected officials and, working with staff, so now I get my projects, and for a few years now, I've just, well, my whole term, because I learned this very early on thanks to this organization. You go to the staff and you work with the staff, and they put your projects into their budget. And then they make presentations, and you don't have to ask for anything during the meetings because you already worked with staff to get your projects in there and funded. And so that's what I've been doing. So I don't have to at the end basically beg for scraps out of the reserves. So I've been very effective in bringing a lot of money to my district. And I mean, I could put something together with all the money that I've gotten from my district. It will definitely take time though, and I have to say we are very busy with the pandemic, and hurricane season is coming along. Which, before I forget, get your sandbags, be prepared, stock up, because if one does come, you don't want to be stuck without supplies. That was actually another class through the National Association of Latino Elected Officials, was an emergency management class, and getting some ideas from others and what they did. Particularly, the speakers was from Dallas, Texas, and all the flooding that they had and what they did, and just learning from each other. So there's been a huge return on investment in the activities that I've been involved with for the county. And I could go on and on with all of them, but I think I've taken up another half of our meeting, of our webinar on that. I will go on to the second question. We have 3 minutes left. What are your thoughts on a mandate or ordinance waiving early lease termination fees for those who have lost their jobs, been furloughed because of COVID? And it's pretty long, but she does go on to explain that she had to pay 2 months rent, or she was asked to pay 2 months rent in order to move out, which is really difficult for people in these times. So that is a very, very good point. And this is something definitely that we're going to look into and see what we could do. I'll just explain that some of the things that have to do with tenants and tenants' rights we're preempted from doing by the state. So we have to look more. We just got the question today, so unfortunately didn't have the time to look into it more. But I will definitely look into that and see if there's something that we could do on the county level to prevent termination fees, because that is a really good point. If you can't pay, if you lost your job and you cannot pay your rent and you need to move out to move in with somebody else who can help you, there shouldn't be anything that should prevent you from being able to do that. So I will definitely look into that and see what we can do. We have one more question left, but I just want to ask Yvette if there's any questions that came in. And
somebody was asking, well, it's more comments. They said that it's great you're involved with the National Association of Counties and Florida for Counties. And then somebody, I guess, wasn't sure what you meant with Vegas and question mark Vegas. Can you go more into what you meant when you said Vegas?
I didn't say Vegas.
That's what somebody put in here. And then somebody said, why are septic systems even still being allowed on Lake Pickett?
Okay, so septic systems on Lake Pickett. That's another great question. So if it was up to me, I wouldn't have any developments within 1,000 feet of a pristine body of water. Unfortunately, that's not up to me. And to code, we do have to allow people who own property on lakes to be able to build. We do have some buffer space though, and ask them, to stay within a certain amount of feet away from the body of water. This goes for lakes and rivers. But septic tanks, so this is a very specific case too. So the reason why it's kind of hard for me to explain is because it depends on where you are. on what the code is and whether you're on septic or if you're on a sewage line. And on Lake Pickett specifically, it's a rural settlement. And in this rural settlement, depending, this is why it's confusing too, because there were some decisions made in this area on whether you could have the sewage line or not, and they were entitlements. And so you have Corner Lake Rural Settlement, you have Cypress Lake Rural Settlement, and you have Lake Pickett Rural Settlement, all basically bordering each other. And then you have the Bithlo Rural Settlement. So you have all four of those rural settlements bordering each other, and each one of them have different requirements when it comes to either using septic tanks or sewage lines. Cypress Lakes and Corner Lakes was approved in the code to have sewage lines. And that was just a deal before we got really into our land use comp plan. And so they were changing a lot of the rules on these property owners. And in order to get the comp plan created to what we have today, they were negotiations and compromises made, and that was one of them. The Lake Pickett Rural Settlement and Bithlo Rural Settlement, on the other hand, were not allowed in those negotiations to have sewage lines. But in the Lake Pickett one, they were allowed, in the new developments, they were at least allowed to get county water. So they can have county or what people call city water or utilities for water, but they can't have the sewage lines. And the reasoning for that of the people who lived in the area and what they negotiated was that if they allowed sewage lines, then it would allow smaller lots and more urban development. And if you have a septic tank, you can't have a small lot because then you have more contamination in the aquifers if you have too many septic tanks and smaller lots that's together. And this is definitely something that you could see happening in the more of the tighter lots or properties in Bithlo. They're almost the septic tanks and their wells and everything is like almost all on top of each other, and I'll just say it's really gross. So in Bithlo, because of some of the water issues that they were having, that they were allowed to get the sewage line, but only under certain circumstances. The problem is if a development or a community is already developed, they would have to pay out of their taxes or on their own for that connection of the sewage line to their house. And the reasoning from the county on that is that it's not fair to the other taxpayers to pay for someone else's development, their lot being further developed, when they already paid their own connection development fees. And how that works is that when you purchase a newly built house or a new subdivision comes in, the cost of that connection is paid for by the developer. It's not paid for by the taxpayers. And then that cost, the developer who pays for those connections, the cost rolls down to the home buyer. So the home buyer is, in the end, really paying for those connections. So that's why they say, the taxpayers never pay for that connection to that home. And that's why they say if there's any homes that are already developed and built who wants to upgrade from septic tank to sewage line, it's on that homeowner to pay for those connections, just like every other homeowner has done. And it's not fair for other taxpayers to have to pay for their improvements to their property. There's a little long explanation to that. Were there any other questions? I see one here.
One was,
thank you for the travel budget question. That was going to be my question too. Okay. Anything else?
That was it, Commissioner.
Okay, well, we're 5 minutes over, but it was a great discussion. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. And again, I will express, like always, please stay engaged with your local government, your state and federal government as well. I'll just add one more thing. One thing I did learn also from the National Association of Counties is that they did a poll of all the legislators in the federal level and asked them, like, what convinced them to make their votes yes or no, what influenced them. And on that poll or survey was letters from people like you. And there was also on that visits from people like me, other elected officials. And there was a huge percentage gap, I would say, from they were more influenced by another elected official visiting them and advocating on behalf of or against something than an everyday constituent. So that's why it's so important that I am here fighting for you on the state level, on the federal level, and even on our county board. And I will continue fighting for you. But that doesn't mean that I don't need your help too. So there's going to be more votes coming up on the federal level for funding that we're going to need on the local level. So get ready to hear more from me, what I'm going to need you to do, but I'm going to need your help to send letters to our federal elected officials. And I will be doing it too, and I will be calling them, talking to them. So I will be doing my work, but I need you to help me with that too. So that will be coming. And this is in regards to the pandemic and some funding for COVID-19 relief. And so thank you again. I do see another question. Thank you. I look forward to hearing more about the lease termination fees when you have a chance to look at it. Definitely. Oh, and please, there's a contact form on my website, emilybonilla.com. Please go ahead. The person who's asking about the termination fees, please go ahead and fill out that form, because whenever anyone had constituents have any issues, it's best for you to fill out that form, because that keeps us accountable and is able to track all of the questions and inquiries that we get from constituents, that we make sure we don't leave in it, we don't forget about anyone or any questions that we've gotten from people. So make sure you fill out that contact form. All right, so thank you and continue to be involved. And I look forward to seeing you or talking to you again in the next Wind Down Wednesday. Goodbye.